He married her for a green card, my sister Vanessa testified from the witness stand, her voice dripping with righteous conviction. Their whole relationship is fake. She met him online, married him within 3 months, and now he's using her for citizenship. My parents sat in the gallery nodding vigorously, clutching their folder of evidence, while my husband Alexander held my hand so tightly I could feel his pulse racing. What my family didn't know, what they never bothered to discover beneath their hatred and assumptions, was that the man they were trying to deport was one of the most valuable intelligence assets the United States had acquired in decades. The immigration courtroom in downtown Boston was sterile and cold, all fluorescent lights and government-issue furniture. Judge Patricia Harwood presided with the weary expression of someone who seen every variation of family dysfunction that American courts could produce. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Harwood addressed my sister, you're alleging that the marriage between your sister Gabrielle Mitchell and Alexander Volkov is fraudulent. Can you provide specific evidence supporting this claim? They barely know each other, Your Honor. He's Russian. She's American. They have nothing in common. He's clearly using her to stay in this country. Clearly is a strong word. What specific evidence do you have? Vanessa pulled out her phone. I have screenshots of their text messages from the first month they met. They're completely superficial. Nothing personal. No real connection. You accessed your sister's private messages? Our mother did. From Gabrielle's old phone. She was trying to protect her. I closed my eyes. My mother had stolen my backup phone from my childhood bedroom during their last visit, a visit I foolishly allowed because I hoped introducing Alexander might build bridges. Instead, they'd used it to build a case against us. Your Honor, Alexander's attorney, James Caldwell, stood. We object to the admission of illegally obtained private communications. Sustained. Mrs. Mitchell, do you have evidence that wasn't stolen from your sister's personal devices? Vanessa faltered. They got married after knowing each other for 3 months. That's suspicious. Short engagements aren't illegal. He's 10 years older than her. Also not illegal. He barely speaks English. Alexander leaned toward the microphone at our table. I speak 4 languages fluently, including English, he said, his accent present but his grammar perfect. I have a doctoral degree from Moscow State University. I have published 63 peer-reviewed papers. In English. Vanessa flushed. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Harwood said, I'm going to need something more substantive than, he's foreign and older. My mother stood up from the gallery. Your Honor, may I speak? This is irregular. Are you a witness? I'm Gabrielle's mother. I have information the court needs to hear. Judge Harwood sighed. Approach the witness stand. You'll be sworn in. My mother, Linda Mitchell, walked forward with the confident stride of someone who believed she was about to save her daughter from a terrible mistake. She was sworn in and took her seat. Your Honor, I've known my daughter her entire life. She's always been naive, trusting, easy to manipulate. This man, she gestured at Alexander with undisguised contempt, appeared out of nowhere. No family we could verify. No background we could check. He claims to be a scientist, but how would we know? We don't speak Russian. What specific evidence do you have of marriage fraud? He has no job. He's employed by the federal government, James interrupted. Documentation was submitted with our response filing. That's what they claim, but doing what? If he's such an important scientist, why is he working for the government instead of a university or a company? Why is everything about him so secretive? Judge Harwood opened a file on her desk, the file containing Alexander's immigration records and background information. I watched her eyes scan the first page. Then stop. Her entire demeanor changed. Mrs. Mitchell, she said slowly, your son-in-law. He's Dr. Alexander Volkov? The nuclear physicist? I don't know what kind of physicist he claims to be. The Dr. Alexander Volkov we granted emergency asylum to last year? The one whose defection from Russia prevented 3 international incidents. The courtroom went silent. My mother's confident expression faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Judge Harwood picked up her phone. Get me Homeland Security. We have a family making false statements about a protected national asset. She looked at my mother with an expression that had shifted from weary to severe. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm going to ask you to remain seated. You may want to contact an attorney. What? Why? We're the ones reporting fraud. You're reporting nothing. What you're doing is filing false claims against a man under federal protection, potentially compromising a classified program, and wasting significant court resources. She turned to Vanessa. You too. Stay where you are. My father had gone pale in the gallery. My mother looked like she might faint. Vanessa had started to cry. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something loosen in my chest. It had started 3 years ago, at a scientific conference in Geneva. I was a translator, specialized in technical Russian, a skill I'd developed in graduate school when I'd become fascinated with Soviet-era physics research. I worked freelance, mostly for academic institutions and government agencies who needed someone who could navigate both the language and the science. Alexander had been presenting a paper on theoretical applications of nuclear fusion. His English was excellent for everyday conversation but struggled with the precise terminology his work required. The conference organizers had hired me to assist. Over 3 days of working together, something unexpected happened. We talked. Not just about physics, but about literature, music, family, dreams. He was brilliant but gentle. Funny in a dry, understated way. Passionate about his work but equally passionate about poetry and cooking and the small beauties of ordinary life. In Russia, we have a saying, he told me on the last night. The heart is not a stone, it can be warmed. Is your heart warm? I asked. I didn't think so. Until this week. We stayed in touch after the conference. Emails first, then video calls, then visits. I traveled to Moscow twice, navigating the complexities of Russian bureaucracy. He came to Boston once, ostensibly for another conference. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't know until much later, was that during those Moscow trips, Alexander was already in contact with American intelligence. He'd been growing increasingly alarmed by the direction of Russian nuclear research, specifically, projects that violated international treaties and posed genuine threats to global security. He was planning to defect. He just hadn't told me yet. The proposal came 6 months after we met. Unconventional, yes. Fast, certainly. But the connection between us was real, more real than anything I'd ever experienced. My family won't understand, I told him. Then we will help them understand. Together. I believed him. I believed love could bridge any gap. I was wrong. My family had never approved of anything I did. I disappointed them by choosing translation over law school. I disappointed them by remaining single into my 30s. And when I finally found someone brilliant and kind and devoted, they'd been horrified. He's Russian, my mother had said. You can't trust them. He's foreign, my father had added. He's probably just using you. He's so much older, Vanessa had complained. It's weird. No amount of explanation could change their minds. They didn't want to meet him. They didn't want to understand. They wanted me to come to my senses and find someone appropriate. When Alexander's defection happened, everything changed. He'd been in Russia, supposedly visiting his elderly mother. In reality, he was completing the transfer of critical documents and making final arrangements. The extraction was dangerous, more dangerous than he'd ever admitted to me. He'd arrived at the American embassy in Moscow one step ahead of FSB agents who would have killed him without hesitation. I learned all of this afterward, when men in suits arrived at my apartment with grim expressions and classified briefings. Your husband is safe, they'd told me, but there are things you need to understand about who he is and what he's done. Alexander was a hero. His information had prevented nuclear material from falling into the hands of hostile actors. His expertise had exposed critical vulnerabilities in Russian defense systems. His defection had been called one of the most significant intelligence gains in a decade. And my family wanted to have him deported. They'd filed the complaint 3 months after Alexander arrived in the US. They'd gathered their evidence of our supposedly fake marriage. They'd testified before immigration officials that I'd been conned by a foreign scammer. They had no idea what they were interfering with. The courtroom had descended into chaos. 2 men in suits had entered through a side door, Homeland Security, I assumed, and were conferring with Judge Harwood in urgent whispers. My mother was demanding to know what was happening. My father had started shouting about his rights. Vanessa was on her phone, presumably calling a lawyer. Alexander sat beside me, calm in the midst of the storm. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have told your family the truth from the beginning. You couldn't. It was classified. There were ways. I could have arranged briefings. Made them understand. They didn't want to understand. That's not your fault. Still. This is my world intruding on yours. You shouldn't have to defend our marriage in court because of who I am. I'm not defending our marriage because of who you are. I'm defending it because it's real. Because I love you. Because my family is wrong, and they need to hear that from a judge since they won't hear it from me. Judge Harwood returned to the bench. The Homeland Security agents took positions near the exits, not threatening, but present. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, the judge addressed my parents, Mrs. Vanessa Mitchell. I need you to understand the severity of what's happened here today. We were trying to protect our daughter, my mother started. You were trying to destroy her marriage based on prejudice and stolen private communications. But more seriously, you filed formal complaints against a man under federal protection. Do you understand what that means? Silence. Dr. Volkov defected from Russia at great personal risk. His information has been instrumental in protecting American national security. He has been granted asylum and permanent residency through a process that was thoroughly vetted by intelligence agencies. His marriage to your daughter was part of that vetting. Agents interviewed both of them extensively to ensure the relationship was genuine. We didn't know. You didn't ask. You assumed. And your assumptions have triggered a security review because any formal complaint against Dr. Volkov must be investigated, even clearly frivolous ones. That investigation will cost taxpayer money, waste federal resources, and potentially complicate ongoing operations. We're patriots, my father said weakly. We were trying to do the right thing. You were trying to separate your daughter from her husband because you don't like where he's from. That's not patriotism. That's xenophobia with paperwork. Judge Harwood turned to Alexander and me. Dr. Volkov, Mrs. Volkov. On behalf of this court, I apologize for the time you've wasted here today. Your marriage is clearly legitimate. The fraud complaints are dismissed with prejudice. Thank you, Your Honor, Alexander said. As for the Mitchell family, the judge's voice hardened. Filing false statements in immigration proceedings is a federal crime. Normally, I'd recommend prosecution. However, the agency representatives have suggested that a full criminal case might draw unwanted attention to Dr. Volkov's situation. My mother's face flooded with relief. Don't celebrate yet. You won't be charged with fraud, but you will be charged with theft, the stolen phone and accessed communications. And you'll be required to attend court-ordered counseling about immigration law and cultural sensitivity. If you ever file another complaint against Dr. Volkov or interfere with his legal status in any way, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is outrageous. This is mercy you don't deserve. Accept it quietly. Judge Harwood banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, my family huddled together, whispering urgently. My father glared at us. My mother wouldn't make eye contact. Vanessa was still crying. I walked toward them. Alexander tried to hold me back, but I shook my head. Mom, Dad, Vanessa. They turned to face me, my mother with defiance, my father with anger, my sister with something that might have been shame. You tried to deport my husband. You filed false complaints. You stole my private property. You testified against me in court. I kept my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. You did all of this because you couldn't accept that I made a choice you didn't approve of. We were protecting you, my mother said. From what? From a man who loves me? From a hero who risked his life for this country? From the happiest I've ever been? He's Russian, Gabrielle. You can't trust. He gave up everything, his country, his family, his career, because he believed in doing the right thing. What have you ever sacrificed for your principles? Nothing. You just judge from the sidelines and tear down anyone who doesn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You've been doing it my whole life. My career wasn't good enough. My choices weren't good enough. And now my husband isn't good enough because he has an accent and a complicated past. My father stepped forward. We're your family. We deserve respect. Respect is earned. You've earned nothing but my contempt. I felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. I wanted you at my wedding. I wanted you to know my husband. I wanted my children, when we have them, to have grandparents who loved them. But you made that impossible. You chose your prejudice over your daughter. Gabrielle, Vanessa started. Don't. You testified against me. In court. You told a judge my marriage was fake. You tried to have my husband sent back to a country where he'd be killed. I shook my head. We're done. All of us. I don't have a family anymore. I turned and walked back to Alexander. He wrapped his arm around me, solid and warm. Are you all right? He asked. No. But I will be. We walked to our car, leaving my family standing on the courthouse steps. 6 months later, we moved to New Mexico. Alexander had accepted a position at Los Alamos National Laboratory, ironic, given the history, but appropriate for his expertise. I continued my translation work remotely, with occasional consulting jobs for government agencies who needed my unusual skill set. We bought a small house with a view of the mountains. We adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Pushkin, after Alexander's favorite poet. We built a life together, far from Boston and the family that had tried to destroy us. My mother sent letters. I didn't open them. Vanessa tried to call. I didn't answer. My father appeared at our door once, having flown to Albuquerque unannounced. I spoke to him through the screen. I'm sorry, he said. He looked older, diminished. We were wrong. About all of it. Yes. You were. Can we try again? Start over? I thought about it. The court case. The testimony. The stolen phone. Years of criticism and dismissal and conditional love that evaporated the moment I made a choice they didn't like. No. Gabrielle, please. You had decades to treat me with respect. You had years to accept my choices. You had months to meet Alexander and see him as a person instead of a threat. Instead, you tried to have him deported. You testified in court that my marriage was fake. You put our safety at risk because you couldn't handle having a Russian son-in-law. We didn't know who he was. You didn't care who he was. You decided he was guilty the moment you heard his accent. Nothing would have changed your minds. I paused. Go home, Dad. There's nothing for you here. I closed the door. Alexander found me in the kitchen, staring out the window at the desert landscape. You didn't have to do that, he said. I would understand if you wanted to reconnect with them. They tried to destroy our life. They testified against you in federal court. They put you at risk. They're still your family. No. You're my family now. Pushkin is my family. The life we've built is my family. I turned to face him. I don't need people who only love me when I do what they want. I need people who love me for who I am. I do love you for who you are. I know. That's why I married you. He pulled me close. We stood together in our kitchen, in our home, in the life we'd built against all odds. Do you ever regret it? I asked. Defecting? Leaving everything behind? I left behind a country that was asking me to do unconscionable things. I left behind a government that would have used my work to harm millions. I left behind a life that required me to betray my own conscience every day. He kissed my forehead. I gained a country that values freedom. A life that allows me to do meaningful work. And a wife who stood beside me in court while her own family tried to tear us apart. How could I regret that? My family called you a fraud. Your family doesn't know me. They never tried to know me. Their opinion has no weight. The judge knew you. She knew exactly who you were. Alexander smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. That was a satisfying moment, I admit. Watching your mother's expression when she realized her green card scammer was a protected national asset, she looked like she might faint. I was hoping she would. It would have simplified things. I laughed despite everything. That was Alexander's gift, finding the absurdity in painful situations, making me laugh when I wanted to cry. I love you, I said. I love you too. And I'm sorry your family couldn't see what we have. They never wanted to see it. They wanted to be right more than they wanted to be family. A year later, our daughter was born. We named her Natasha, a compromise between my preference for something American and Alexander's desire to honor his heritage. She had his eyes and my stubbornness and a laugh that filled our small house with joy. I sent one photo to my family. One message: you have a granddaughter. Her name is Natasha. You're welcome to meet her if you can accept her father completely. Otherwise, don't contact us. My mother responded with a long email about how they'd changed, how they understood now, how they wanted to be part of Natasha's life. I didn't believe her. But I wanted to give my daughter the chance at a larger family, even if I didn't think it would work. They came for Christmas. It was awkward. Stilted. My mother tried too hard. My father said almost nothing. Vanessa brought an expensive gift that felt like an apology she couldn't voice. But they held Natasha. They played with her. They watched her with something approaching wonder. She's beautiful, my mother said, tears in her eyes. She has your smile. She has Alexander's eyes. Yes. My mother looked at my husband, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time. She does. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a beginning, a fragile, tentative step towards something that might eventually become family again. Judge Harwood had made a different call that day in court. She'd seen the truth my family couldn't see, that our marriage was real, our love was genuine, and the man they'd tried to deport was a hero. Maybe that ruling had done more than just save our life together. Maybe it had saved my family too. Not from Alexander. From themselves. Only time would tell if they'd learned enough to deserve a second chance. But watching my mother hold my daughter, half Russian, half American, wholly loved, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Fragile. Uncertain. But present. And in the end, that was more than my family had ever given me before.